What's your reaction to David Ortiz being voted into the Hall of Fame?
Well, obviously, this is the right move. He won 3 world championships. He made 10 All-Star teams. He had 541 homers and had a 931 OPS. Only 7 players in history can match both of those numbers. Look at his postseason career. He's one of the best postseason players ever. 2013 against the Cardinals in the World Series, he hit 688, and the rest of the team hit under 200. And when you're looking at the history of the Red Sox, Ted Williams is obviously the greatest Red Sox player ever, but you could make a case that either David Ortiz or Carl Yastrzemski is the second greatest Red Sox ever. That's how big an impact he had on that team, a leader in every way, and a Hall of Famer on the first ballot.
I think you can make a case that he's the second best Red Sox player ever. I think, Timmy, you could actually make a case that David Ortiz is the most important Red Sox player ever. Let's remember, it had been 86 years between World Series when they won in 2004. Then they won in 2007. Then they came back and won in 2013 when David Ortiz looked like Barry Bonds in the postseason. I mean, of all the numbers, the 688 is great. He struck out 1 time in 28 plate appearances during that World Series, as locked in as I've ever seen a hitter. But more than that, the reason that David Ortiz is so resonant among Boston Red Sox fans is the personality. This is somebody who I think it really played in his favor with voters here. David Ortiz tested positive in 2003 for performance-enhancing drugs in the survey testing, but he is the first player to test positive and go into the Hall of Fame, and I think a lot of that is because of who he is and what a great person he is in the city of Boston.
Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up. That is the elephant in the room. Ortiz, the first player to go into the Hall of Fame with a Red Sox hat since Pedro Martinez in 2015. El has much more on the guys who did not get in.
Yeah, you mentioned that David Ortiz in that postseason run was Barry Bonds-like. Meanwhile, he is in the Hall of Fame. 10 years have come and gone. Neither Barry Bonds nor Roger Clemens were elected into the Hall of Fame by the media. Jeff, I know that you've got a column up on ESPN Plus right now calling the Hall of Fame a failure for its omission of Bonds. Why do you believe that?
Because I think that the Hall of Fame exists best as a museum. And a museum talks about history. And you cannot tell the history of Major League Baseball without the man who hit more home runs than anyone, without the man who hit more home runs in a single season than anyone, without the man who won 7 MVP awards. I'm not trying to look past Barry Bonds' steroid use. It's bad, and it was obviously bad, but the reality is he was one of the greatest players in history. He's right up there with Babe Ruth. He is right up there with Willie Mays, and the fact that the writers did not induct him, I think, is a true shame. And it's going to be on the Today Era committee that's going to be convening in December. There are 16 people on that committee, and Barry Bonds needs to get 12 votes in order to get on there. Between him and Roger Clemens and Curt Schilling, who didn't make it today, it is quite the laundry list of talent that didn't get in alongside David Ortiz.
And it was so close, Tim. Barry Bonds 36 votes shy, Clemens 39 votes shy. Where do you stand on their induction into the Hall of Fame?
Well, I voted for Bonds and Clemens every year that they were eligible. And I'm not saying that I was right about that, but it just seems to me when they played, there was this tacit agreement in Major League Baseball that we're not testing, we're not checking. A lot of guys are doing this. No one's going to get caught. I'm not condoning what they did. But at the same time, what they were doing at that time really wasn't being checked, which separates them from anyone who got checked from 2005 on. And there's no way around this, for me at least. Barry Bonds is the 3rd greatest hitter of all time after Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. And Roger Clemens, you could at least make a case, is the 2nd greatest pitcher ever after Walter Johnson. And neither one of those guys is getting in the Hall of Fame after 10 years. But I trust the process. Just shows you again how hard it is to get 3 out of 4 votes. But as Jeff said, they'll probably get another chance in December with a different group. But I've been on those committees before, and it is not easy to make it, even at getting 12 out of 16 votes.
For the folks at home, what Kurkjian and Passan are referring to is that Bonds and Clemens will get it could get in potentially via the Veterans Committee, who meet next December of this year, Kev.
Okay, so no Bonds, no Clemens. Alex Rodriguez, first year on the ballot, gets just 34% of the vote, 696 home runs, fourth all-time. Tim, what do you make of that number?
Well, I'm certainly not surprised because, again, Alex Rodriguez got busted twice for PEDs and was suspended from baseball for a year after we started checking, after we started testing, after there were penalties in place. And a lot of people disagree, but to me, that's what separates Alex Rodriguez and Manny Ramirez from Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. So that's why A-Rod's numbers were at 34%. You can go from 34% and get to 75%, but with the baggage that A-Rod is carrying, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now he's in the same spot as Bonds and Clemens.
And I count myself among those who disagree, Tim. I understand. My whole perspective is Alex Rodriguez is unquestionably one of the greatest baseball players of all time. But I look at the 34% and I compare it to another number, 36.2%. That's how much Barry Bonds got in his first year on the ballot. And we saw him stall out today in his 10th year at 66% without a positive test, just with the knowledge that he admitted not to knowingly using performance-enhancing drugs, but to using them. Alex Rodriguez admitted a whole lot more than that, and I think that it's going to be awfully difficult to rescue himself at this point unless the writers have a complete 180 in their perspective.
You had an excellent article up on ESPN.com, Jeff Passan, where you said the Hall has one job: tell the story of the sport. Nobody's bigger than that story than Barry Lamar Bonds, who is not going to get in the Hall of Fame, according to the writers. Tim, Jeff, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.